Don't drive over the flag, will you?
Whoa! You alright? And I have much pleasure in declaring Sheldon Day open.
Sheldon Day, a traditional village fete, unchanged from the time when an Englishman's home was his castle, when horsepower meant just that. Well, actually no. Sheldon Day was started in 1984, so it's merely a modern contrivance to help the local community with fundraising. Trying to guess a village's history can be a hit and miss affair. Nowadays, Sheldon's a desirable place to live, and the incomers share the picture postcard setting with those local families who still farm in the area, even though there's no school, no shop, only one bus a week, and the pub's only open for one day a year. Over the course of time, this village has been shaped by forces of nature and commerce that pull in obtuse directions. But we can unravel something of the recent history of Sheldon, even if its origins are lost in the darkness of time. Nowadays, in an area as beautiful as the White Peak, we need strict planning regulations to decide just what can be built where. But before the coming of the internal combustion engine, as well as water and electricity mains, there are other practical restrictions on where you could live. If there wasn't a good supply of food, fuel and water, then there really wasn't a good reason to live there.
And Sheldon is a village that never ought to be here. For the reason is that it was built with no water whatsoever. There's no water in this village. Go back to...
Ralph Lord's a relative newcomer to Sheldon. He's only lived here for 22 years. But one of his hobbies is local history, and today he's passing on some of his knowledge to visitors from the Longston area.
So there was no water in the village, so you've got to imagine it's a dry area, so why build a village here? No one knows. There's lead mining all around it, but there was very few lead miners.
Nonetheless, the presence of lead must have been central to its founding and prosperity. All around Sheldon you can see evidence of mining through the ages. Just across the fields from Sheldon you can see one of the best preserved lead mines in England. The Magpie was worked on and off for 300 years. Since 1962, the Peak District Mines Historical Society have looked after the site. Their base, the old agent's cottage, dates from 1840, when Cornish methods of mining were introduced. By then, the miners were working at depths of 680 feet. This was well below the water table, so they had to be pumping constantly. In 1871, a record 850 tonnes of ore was raised, but to continue this harvest meant going deeper, and the pumps they had just couldn't cope. The only solution was to dig a drainage level or sough from the mine direct to the River Wye. The job took 8 years, and it did allow the mine to be worked to a depth of 730 feet, but within 2 years the company had gone into liquidation. The engine house and chimney at Magpie are a stark reminder of an industry that once flourished all around Sheldon. In its day, over 8,000 gallons of water a minute used to flow out of the Magpie Sough.
Right, you all must be very, very brave to be stood where you stood, because you stood on top of the Magpie Sough that goes under and out at Ashford that they tried to drain the mine with. There's about 400,000 gallons of water an hour going through now. It was more than that. It was something like nearly 12 or 14 million a day, but it's gone right down now because the water table has dropped. So when they sunk this shaft right through here, which was about 1841 when it was started, it was altered again at a later date. Sheldon had a little spot called Rebecca's Well, which is about a quarter of a mile down there where they could get a drop of water, only a drop of water, and that was in flooded times. That vanished as soon as they did the shaft. So 450 foot down from where you are now is the shaft. I've got a book with a photograph in that my wife's taking up to the hall later on for you to have a look at. They did it with men in boats. They put locks in it, built it all up so the boats could go in and out, but they still couldn't get rid of the water. It's 150 foot higher, the water level is, than what the mine is itself. The mine's 700 and something feet deep. This is 450 feet deep. The water is below that level. They pumped it with all sorts of engines, but they couldn't get it out. Not enough. And if they had have done, the sayings have it that they never would have found any lead in any case because the lead wasn't there.
Whilst time stands still at the Magpie, Sheldon lives on as a working village. Over the years, changes occur. Nothing drastic, of course, but the old ways can so easily be lost if they're not recorded. Ralph's always keen to pick up clues to the village's past. The older residents are a rich source of information. So too the farmers and keepers who know the area intimately.
Morning, Tom.
Morning, Ralph.
I wonder if you could just show me a bit about the water supply that starts up there at Potboil this morning.
Yeah, I will do.
Shall we just wander on that way?
Yeah.
Tom Richardson's a local river keeper, and this is his patch. We're on the A6 near the fish ponds and the Potboil spring that feeds them. It's a constant supply of fresh, clean water, summer and winter alike. And although it's over 1.5 miles from Sheldon, it was the village's only shore supply. In the 19th century, water was piped into Sheldon from here. A water wheel, powered by the river, was used to raise the water over 500 feet from the spring to a header tank at the top of the village.
Because I don't know much about it at this end.
Well, it was always piped from this end down to the pump at the bobbin mill, and then it was pumped up from the bobbin mill, up that ridge there, and up to Sheldon.
It goes through a pipe?
I don't actually know where the tank was in Sheldon.
Yeah, I do. I know where the tank was, yeah. It goes through a pipe all the way down, does it, Tom? Down to the pump?
Down to the bobbin mill,
Yeah.
to the old water wheel there, and then it's pumped from there up.
Can you see the pipe anywhere now at all?
Yes, you can, yes. show you that.
Well, that's the old pipe that's still there, is it?
And you'll notice that the joints are not screwed, they're just corked.
Corked up joints.
Corked up joints until they get to the bobbin mill.
Yeah.
And then where they pick up from the pump, they're a sealed joint.
They're a seal joint up the hill.
Bolted together. Like.
Yeah.
But this is just a natural flow, you
Yeah.
see.
Because I suppose you know that years ago, before ever they had, well, as it's wet now, there'd be plenty of water in Sheldon. But they used to walk to here, you know, from Sheldon with buckets, come down the track, down the wood, fill the buckets here and carry them back to Sheldon.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, well, there's no water supply at all, only what came off the houses.
And was it the estate then that put the
Yeah, the
water
estate,
supply in for
the
Sheldon?
estate supplied the pipe, they supplied the pipe and whatever building wanted doing at this end. They built the pump house and they built the tank at the top of Sheldon.
Yes.
But Sheldon farmers and Vintalis's father and them, they had to dig the, well, his grandfather, they had to dig the track. They were Duke's men, and when they got home at night, they had to dig the track for nothing and fill the track in afterwards.
So they installed it and the estate
Provided the money
material.
for the pipe and stuff.
Yeah. See where it's the indentation down there?
Yeah.
And it run right along, right down the side, and down to the corner of the ponds, through the corner of the ponds, and I'll show you on the Magpie Sough where it comes across. But when they opened the Sough up, they broke it off.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can remember them opening it up and redoing it. I bet that was just a bit of a major sight if you'd have been stood there and saw that blow out.
Well, I was actually, he did it with a JCB,
Yeah.
and when he finally cut out, the water that rushed out nearly took the JCB over.
Everything went.
It hit all the cab, the whole lot come, you know,
Yeah.
when he did that last dig, I was there. And it was quite good actually.
Because there'd be a few million gallons of water behind that.
But it built quite high up. And they say that when they dropped that, it dropped the level of the River Lathgill.
That's what they tell us, yeah. But they say it can't do because they say the one that feeds the Lathgill is that one that's in Moor Plantation, the other side of Sheldon, once a week as we call it. Now you said you could still see water pipe that went up to Sheldon, or
Yeah, you
you
can.
could see where it was.
Comes across here and it comes across and into there, look, you can just see it there.
Yeah.
You can see
Oh,
it.
aye, down there.
Yeah, straight across there. So it was a feat of engineering because it's about 6-7 foot deep.
Yes,
you know?
aye, it's a good depth, isn't it?
Yeah.
At Magpie, for all the water there was, they still used to have to carry water out of Sheldon village over to Magpie for stock.
Oh yeah.
There was none, they couldn't get none out of ground.
No.
There was no way of getting it out of the ground.
And when did they go on to mains in Sheldon?
Meanwhile, it's late spring in Sheldon, and we can eavesdrop on Ralph as he puts his research to good use. Now, he does claim that he took one group round the village in 25 minutes, but on May the 19th this year, it was a leisurely 2.5-hour tour for the Longston Local History Group. And, if you listen carefully, you should be able to catch the answer to Tom's question about when Sheldon went on to mains water. So, over to you, Ralph.
That is one of the old properties in the village. How old we don't know properly, but just in front, like they've got this fancy garden, that's where there was a mere. That's where the water run off the houses into there, and most of us have put the septic tanks inside them because they were already half dug out. So we put the tanks inside, then levelled the ground up to the top of the tanks. But that is one of them like that. His water for that house would run into there, and next door would probably share it with him. So there'd be water running in there, and that's the water they would drink, feed the cows, drink the cows, and everything at it. That's the only water there was, and that was off of every house. And this was right up till 1882, as near as we can say. And then Chatsworth decided that they could put some water in the village. So the farmers and the men of the village set to, and I'll show you the tank in a bit, where the tank stood. They dug a trench from the top of the hill down to the bobbin mill on the A6. And then they dug another trench along under Shacklow to the top side of the fish ponds. And there's a little stream runs there, a spring called Potboil. It never ever runs dry. It's always got water in it. Then they put a water wheel in, which pushed the water up to the top of the village, and then the water fed itself gravity feed right down the street. And that was about 1882 when they put that in. This is where the tank stood that the water came to. It stood on top of there. It had to stand on top of there to get the head to get down the village. So if you imagine now that it's pumping water up from Ashford, storing it there, and it's running down the street now. It's in cast iron, the big cast iron one, they tell me. And then when this started to get obsolete, they run flaggies just over that direction from here. There was water running from Flag, which helped to feed back down to Bakewell. So what they did, they took a spur off it here, and they pumped at night while they was putting the mains, the proper mains in. They pumped at night round the valve and filled this tank at night time, then switched it off when the tank was full, and then left it all next day so as Flag and Monash could have their water while they was putting this main in, because this one got that fractured in that many places. Because it didn't have a very long lifespan. I can't remember when George told me that they put mains water in, but it's not many years ago. It's 50s, just late 50s, that's all. Right, we'll have a look at this house round the corner now. It's a listed 2 building. We've only got 2 listed buildings in the village, and I think they are both listed 2. The reason that one is listed is that the chimneys haven't to be touched, and neither the windows. Those windows are, well, they're cast iron, and it's supposed to be cast at a Derby foundry. And they tell me a few years ago one was taken out and it's got the name of the foundry down the side, but nobody can remember what it is. Don't know. They don't know. Nobody can remember what it is. But that is one of the reasons why they're like that. If you have a look, there's little bits of them open and all sorts. They're very, very nice. And you see, well, here we come now to how did the people go on. That has been 2 cottages. That has been 2 cottages, definitely, you see. Right, these are 2 very old cottages. You can see where it's been raised, but it has been raised from a cottage. It has an up and a down in any case, because you can see where they've taken the window and built it up with it. That window should be down onto there. So it's always had an upstairs, downstairs. Now, I have been told, whether this is true or not, that they say 8 people lived in this first little corner one, and the other one was a miner's cottage as well. Now here, this is where we start to get to how the people lived here. The other one had a few people, and they won't say how many because nobody actually knows, but say there was 4 in and 8 in this, that's 12 people in 2 small cottages like that. You see, so you're soon going to get your numbers up. We're assuming that was a schoolroom. That was the school, one of the schools. It's a pity Michael Stewart's not here tonight, because Michael's looked at the tithe ward, and in Sheldon there's 2 or 3 little schools where there was teaching people, and 4 or 5 of the people living in the village at the time was school teachers. In here has been 4 cottages. That was a house. Another one has stood here, because Michael's found the foundations when he was gardening. And this corner has been coped off now, admitted, and turned into something else. But this has been another house in the corner. And there's one more here. Now there is a plan of this. And how I come to find it out, and I can't find the man that did it, they come to look for fixing the sewerage and drains. And this man wanted to know if this ivy court, which you stood in now, and this is probably 18 months, 15 months ago, whether the people in Ivy Court would like water laying onto their house, because it didn't look on their map as though they got any water. We'd one crook house in Sheldon as far as we know. Where that extension is now, there used to be a joiner's shop and wheelwrights. I have a picture postcard with it on. It was still there in 1911, it was still there. On the end of this house, the part there, it's just been altered where the extension goes, there is a big crook and they've left it in. They was going to try and make a feature of it, but they couldn't, but it's all left in. Also in the fields around Sheldon, you get the wild pansies growing on the lead rakes and also the early purple orchids, which is always well worth a look. Sheldon Church used to stand where that ivy is just there. It's only a very small church it was, ever so tiny. It used to be full. I know this through records from what the guides have at the pub. It used to be totally full every Sunday, twice a day. And it was mainly guides and bottlers that filled it. Then they decided they wanted a better church, so in 1864, they built a new one just on here, which is a nice little church. We'll just go and have one quick look. But this is your church. It's a fine timbered building up in the top. And the lamps are its main feature light, because I should imagine those lamps came in when the church was built. Someone converted them for them years ago for the electricity. But they've all got the wicks in, all but for the odd one, which I suppose treasure hunters come round, you see. We've had all the silverware pinched 3 or 4 times, but I think if you can't leave a church unlocked, which our church has never closed. If anybody goes and tells the nearest burglar, that's just too bad, but our church has never closed. It's open to anybody to come in any time of day or night. It's a refuge if anybody wants to get into it and that sort of thing, which all churches should be. There is a great cricketing tradition which I'm hoping to start up again between Sheldon and Chatsworth. The 4 cricketers out of the village was Vintalis. Vintalis' father, Anthony Guyte and Thomas Guyte, 2 batsmen, 2 bowlers, all playing in the same team. One of them, twice, he bowled all 10 people clean out, the Chatsworth cricket team. And they gave him the ball, they had the ball inscribed when he did it, and things like that. His name is there, Anthony Guyte. Guyte's Farm. Guyte's Farm.
Guyte's public.
And it's the public house as well. You can still see the light grey where the sign was up on the wall. Better not poke, or I might put windows out in car. For some reason, Sheldon made cheese. Why, I don't know, unless it was to do with the mining that brought it on. But every house has a cheese press. In the pub itself, there is a perfect one in the pantry which is still in a working order. It will still work. The irons will still turn it down and everything is there. There is also a Derbyshire cake oven. For those that don't know what a Derbyshire cake oven is, the oat cakes was always cooked on a slab of stone, never in a pan. It was made, put on a slab of stone with a fire underneath it, which was separate to your house fire, and cooked that way. Years ago, there were some elm trees stood just here. What happened was, in Sheldon, a few years ago, someone saw a duck flying up the village, and just along here was some big elm trees, and it flew into the tree. It never went out to the other side at all. When they cut the trees down, they took them down to either Smith's Woodyard or Chatsworth. When they split them, they found the duck in the middle of the tree. It's a big long one like that. The shape of the knots in the tree is the duck. So they say it is. Now, it was over the fireplace at the Great Batch. But that's the story, and that's where the tree stood. So if anybody says, have you seen the duck tree at Sheldon, you want to say no, because it's not there anymore. They cut it up. That's been knocked about a lot. There's some lovely fireplaces inside it. Tony's really restored everything inside. Very, very nice. He's not spoilt it whatsoever. He's put sympathetic windows in, same as his barn there. He's only put panes of glass in odd places into his building, and he's made a very sympathetic job of it. It's, this is your other listed 2 building. My house, by the way, I bought 20 years ago for £950. I made a mess of it by knocking windows out and putting them things in, didn't I? But that was 22 years ago, like. That, I think, I'll be disputed on this one, but that, I think, is the oldest house we've got in the village. Don't take no notice of the windows, because he smashed all his windows out and put them in. And they tell me it had some very nice windows in it. This used to be the school as was. It's now the memorial hall to the man that should have been Duke of Devonshire, William Cavendish. It closed, this school did, 55 years ago. That's where we're coming back to in a minute, to have a cup of coffee, which I think I shall need. The big high wall that you can see on the top side is not to keep the children in, as this was the playground, as you can guess. That is the end of a very, very old thatched cottage that stood there before I came here. And any of the children that fell down and hurt themselves, or if they wanted a drink of water, they used to have to go there, and the mere is still in the back where she used to scoop the water out for them. They used to wash cuts and everything and treat everything with this water out these meres. And yet the people still survived. They still survived. That's a very old barn. Why it's like that, I don't know. There've been 2 small doors up above, as you can see, at one time, because they'll have had a sill of some type across them. They've been made bigger to get hay and straw in. It's a nice barn, that. You're 1,100 feet when you get to the farm at the top. You're just 1,100 feet. The village climbs about 180 feet from where you were stood in the bottom. That is Manor Farm. That was worked by monks. The bed that you sit on down in the pub has definitely come from there. Right, I'm not going to say that's the house. It would probably be not. There would be a house here. How we know this is, we've got the mound. Underneath there, that is full of dead monks. They're either all buried with their heads to the middle. They're not alive, no. Great. We've always got one.